of, one of the greatest forms of self-betrayal is measuring your life against someone else's ruler. And yet we do it all the time. We scroll through curated moments of other people's lives, smiling faces, glamorous achievements, of timelines that seem perfectly aligned with society's expectations. And then we look at ourselves and think, I'm behind, I'm not enough, I've failed. But here's the truth that we often forget: in those quiet, self-doubting moments, your journey is only yours. Psychologically, the tendency to compare ourselves is deeply human. We're wired to assess where we stand in the social order. From an evolutionary standpoint, comparison once helped us survive, gauging who was stronger, faster, more capable in the tribe. But today that instinct often turns toxic, because now we're not comparing survival skills. We're comparing lifestyles, bank accounts, careers, and filtered happiness. We're comparing someone else's highlight reel to our behind-the-scenes reality. And that kind of comparison doesn't clarify. It distorts. Philosophically, comparison assumes sameness, that we are all meant to live the same kind of life at the same pace, with the same milestones. But if life were a universal blueprint, wouldn't we all be living replicas of one another? Instead, we're born into different cultures, families, experiences, and even neurology. No two people carry the same emotional weight or internal wiring. How then can we expect to be on the same path? Your life is not a race and it's certainly not a performance. It is not meant to be validated by likes, applause, or the ticking of societal clocks. The age at which you graduate, marry, find your career, or make peace with your past. It's not late. It's not early. It's yours. I have spoken to people who became successful in their 60s, who found love after heartbreak at 40, who started again after losing everything. And I have met others who, despite having achieved success early, feel lost because they climbed ladders leaning against the wrong walls. So you see, following a timeline that isn't your own doesn't bring peace. It brings dissonance. You can live a life that looks perfect on paper and still feel disconnected from your soul. This is why it's so important to own your path. Not just walk it, but truly inhabit it. That means accepting your past without shame, your pace without apology, and your growth without needing to explain it to anyone. Because the moment you stop performing for the world is the moment you start living from your truth. But let me be honest, that's not always easy. When everyone else seems to be moving faster, it can feel lonely to walk your own way. And when people don't understand your choices, their silence, or worse, their criticism can echo loudly. But silence is not disapproval, and criticism is not a compass. Other people's opinions are not your instructions. When you stop comparing and start living from a place of inner alignment, something beautiful happens. You begin to feel lighter. Not because your problems disappear, but because the pressure to prove disappears. You're no longer chasing someone else's life. You're cultivating your own. This shift is not just emotional, it's transformational. When we honor our unique path, we reclaim our agency. We start asking deeper questions. What do I want? What feels meaningful to me? What kind of impact do I want to have? These questions move us from autopilot to awareness, from surviving to living. And don't be mistaken. Your journey has value even if no one sees it yet. The internal battles you're fighting, the healing you're doing in silence, the courage it takes to keep going when no one's clapping, all of that is progress. Real progress. And it's shaping a version of you that comparison could never create. Let me leave you with this. The worth of your journey isn't found in how fast you go or how closely it mirrors others. It's found in the depth of your becoming. So, the next time you're tempted to compare, pause. Breathe, and remember their path is theirs. Yours is yours. And that's not a flaw in the design, it's the very point of it. There's a quiet truth that many of us wrestle with. Often in isolation, life hurts sometimes. And when it does, we assume something has gone wrong, that we've taken a wrong turn, made a mistake, or somehow failed the test of being strong enough. But the truth is, pain is not a detour. Struggle is not a sign of failure. In fact, it's often the most essential part of the journey. You see, there is a dangerous narrative in our culture today. The idea that happiness is the goal, of that ease equals success, and that pain is something to escape from as quickly as possible. But real life, meaningful life, doesn't work that way. Because the moments that shape us the most, the ones that carve depth into our soul, are not the easy ones. They are the moments of breaking and rebuilding, the moments of silence after a storm, The moments when we are stripped of everything we thought defined us and still somehow find the will to stand. Psychologically, we know this is true. Growth doesn't happen in the absence of challenge. It happens because of it. There's a concept in psychology called post-traumatic growth, which describes the transformation that can occur not in spite of adversity, but through it. When someone faces a painful, often life-altering experience and chooses to engage with it, not run from it, they can develop increased inner strength, deeper relationships, a clearer sense of purpose, and a richer appreciation for life itself. But none of that growth happens without first sitting in the discomfort. And that's what most people try to avoid. We numb, we distract, we scroll, we bury the pain under productivity or pretend it doesn't exist. But whatever we resist persists. The pain doesn't disappear just because we're ignoring it. It waits. It waits for silence. It waits for stillness. And eventually it demands to be felt. So what if, instead of fighting our struggles, we leaned into them? What if we saw them not as obstacles, but as invitations? What if we started asking, what is this teaching me, instead of, why is this happening to me? That shift from victim to witness, from resistance to reflection, is where transformation begins. Struggle becomes sacred when we allow it to shape us, when we choose to sit with our fear, or our grief, or our disappointment, not to wallow in it, but to understand it. We start to learn things about ourselves that we could never have known otherwise. Things like our capacity to forgive, to begin again, to hold space for contradiction. Things like patience, resilience, and courage, not the kind that screams, but the kind that whispers, get up, one more time. And I want to be very clear here, this is not about glorifying pain or pretending that suffering is noble in and of itself. No, some pain is cruel, some pain is unjust. Some pain should never have been inflicted in the first place. But even then, even in the most broken places, we still get to choose what we build with the pieces. That choice, that agency, is where power lies. Philosophers throughout time have pointed to this. Viktor Frankl, a Holocaust survivor and psychiatrist, once wrote, "When we are no longer able to change a situation, we are challenged to change ourselves. That is the essence of struggle. Not as punishment, but as potential. And it is through that internal transformation that we find not just healing, but meaning. Your journey, with all its highs and lows, its wins and wounds, is crafting a depth in you that no smooth path ever could. And the beauty of that is this: no one else can walk it for you, but no one else needs to. Because the lessons that you are learning, the strength you are building, and the wisdom that you are gathering, they're uniquely yours. And one day, someone will need that exact version of strength. They'll need the story that you are living right now. So don't curse your challenges. Don't hide your scars. They are not evidence of weakness. They are proof that you showed up to your life, even when it was hard to do so. And that matters. I know it's not easy. I know there are days when it feels like you're walking through fog, unsure if you'll ever see the light again. But let me tell you this, the fog always lifts. And when it does, you will see the world differently. Not because it changed, but because you did. So the next time struggle visits you, don't ask to be spared. Ask to be strengthened. Don't run from it. Listen to it. Let it shape you. Let it deepen you. Let it remind you that even in the hardest chapters, you are still becoming. Pain is not the end of your journey. It is the sculptor of your soul. One of the hardest truths we come to realize on this journey of life is that not everyone will understand the path we're walking. And what's even harder is learning that we don't owe anyone an explanation. You don't owe anyone a map to the landscape of your soul. Your decisions, your healing, your pace, none of it requires permission or approval. We live in a world that thrives on visibility. If it's not documented, shared, or validated publicly, it's often treated as if it doesn't count. But growth doesn't always come with applause. And your transformation isn't any less real just because it's happening quietly. In fact, some of the most significant breakthroughs happen in the shadows, behind closed doors, in the moments no one else sees. Psychologically, we crave connection and understanding. As human beings, we're hardwired to belong. So naturally, when we take steps that others can't comprehend, we start to question ourselves. Am I doing the right thing? Have I made a mistake? Why does this feel so lonely? But what we often miss is that the need to be understood can sometimes become a trap. If we're constantly trying to explain ourselves to be accepted, we slowly start editing ourselves to be digestible. And that is the beginning of disconnection from self, from purpose, from truth. Not everyone has the context for your calling. Not everyone has walked through your past or carried your pain. So how can we expect them to understand the choices we make for our healing, our peace, or our future? It's not their fault. It's not even personal. It's just that your inner world isn't theirs to navigate, and it's not your job to make it make sense to them. There's something powerful and deeply freeing about releasing the need to be understood. It doesn't mean you become cold or distant. It means you stop performing. You stop trying to shrink your truth so it can fit into someone else's comfort zone. You stop diluting your dreams just to make them palatable to people who've never dared to dream beyond what's familiar. Philosophically speaking, every individual exists within their own reality, a unique inner universe shaped by experience, perception, and belief. What you feel called to do may not resonate with others simply because they are living a different reality. And that's okay. Your task is not to convert them. Your task is to stay aligned with your own reality, even when it stands alone. Think of all the times people questioned your choices, not out of malice, but out of their own limitations. Maybe they told you to play it safe, to be realistic, or to follow the traditional path. Maybe your silence was mistaken for weakness, or your solitude for sadness. Maybe your choice to walk away from what no longer serves you was seen as ungrateful or irrational. And yet, something inside you knew this is necessary, this is right, this is mine to do. That inner knowing is your compass. It is wiser than fear, louder than external noise, and more trustworthy than any applause. But it requires stillness to hear and courage to follow. There's a quote I once heard that has stayed with me. Sometimes you have to let go of the need to be understood in order to be free. And freedom, true freedom, is being able to walk your path without asking the world for directions. It's trusting that your steps are valid even when no one is clapping. It's honoring your healing, your ambition, your stillness, whatever season you are in, without needing to explain it away. This is especially important when your journey involves growth that's invisible, healing from trauma, leaving a toxic environment, choosing rest over burnout, saying no when people expect a yes. These choices often confuse those who haven't had to make them. But that doesn't make them wrong. It just means they're personal, and personal doesn't require publicity. At some point, you will need to decide who gets access to your inner world, who has earned the right to hear your process, or your doubts, your vision. Not everyone should be invited into those sacred spaces. Some people don't have the language to hold what you're building. Others may unknowingly plant seeds of fear where you're trying to grow courage. So protect your path. Walk it bravely, and speak only when you truly want to share, not when you feel compelled to defend. You are not obligated to carry the weight of other people's confusion. You are only responsible for living in alignment with your truth. And often that alignment is quiet. It doesn't seek permission. It simply is. So if you are walking a path today that few understand, take heart. It doesn't mean you are lost. It may just mean you're going somewhere new, somewhere no one else has dared to go. And that in itself is something sacred. The most authentic journeys are often the least understood. Walk yours anyway. One of the most profound yet overlooked parts of personal growth is that much of it happens in silence. No spotlight, no stage, no applause. Just you, quietly showing up for yourself, doing the internal work that no one else can see, and often no one else even knows about. And yet, this unseen progress may be the most important kind of progress you'll ever make. We are living in a time where visibility is often mistaken for value. If it's not documented, it doesn't count. If no one praises you for it, it must not matter. But that couldn't be further from the truth. Some of the deepest transformations in life happen when you're alone with your thoughts, confronting your fears, making hard decisions that no one else will ever witness or understand. Growth is not always visible to the outside world, but it's always felt deeply and profoundly on the inside. Psychologically, we often seek external validation to feel a sense of progress. It's natural. The human brain is wired to respond to rewards, acknowledgement, approval, recognition. But this dependency on external reward can become dangerous when it overrides our internal compass. Because what happens when there is no one watching, no clapping, no audience, no feedback? Do you still continue? Do you still believe that the work matters? True growth asks that you continue even when the world is silent. You see, Maturity begins when we no longer need to be seen to keep going. When our motivation shifts from how it looks to why it matters. When the reason you heal, or work hard, or forgive, or set boundaries is not because someone will praise you for it, but because it's the right thing for your evolution. There is a kind of strength that comes from working in the dark. It's quiet, but it's steady. It's not dramatic or loud, but it's real. And that kind of strength builds integrity. The alignment between who you are on the inside and how you show up in the world, even when no one is watching. Philosophically, this is the essence of what ancient thinkers have always taught, that the self is not built through performance but through introspection. Socrates said, the unexamined life is not worth living. But he didn't mean examined publicly. He meant examined within. The questions you ask yourself when no one else is around. Am I proud of who I am becoming? Am I choosing courage over comfort? Am I honoring my truth, even when it's inconvenient? These are the questions that define your path far more than any public recognition ever will. And yet, we often devalue these quiet moments of progress because they lack the validation we've been conditioned to seek. We think if no one else can see the change, then maybe the change isn't real. But real transformation doesn't ask for attention. It asks for commitment, it asks for honesty, it asks for patience. I've met people who are quietly battling anxiety every single day, yet still manage to show up for their families, their work, and themselves. I've seen people grieving in silence, holding themselves together with nothing but willpower, trying to rebuild piece by piece. I've seen people letting go of toxic cycles, changing generational patterns, creating better lives for their children, all without a word of praise. These people are heroes, though they may never be recognized as such. If that's you, if you're quietly doing the work, rebuilding, healing, forgiving, growing, I want you to know I see you. Maybe not with my eyes, but with my understanding. And more importantly, you should see yourself. Acknowledge your own strength. Celebrate your invisible victories. Progress is not always measurable. It's not always a straight line. Sometimes it looks like being able to speak your truth without shaking. Sometimes it's saying no when your whole life you've been trained to say lies. Sometimes it's just getting out of bed and choosing to try again. Don't underestimate these moments. They are the bricks that build a foundation for the life you're becoming capable of living. And here's something else. Consistency in silence is a sign of deep character. Anyone can perform when the lights are on, but who are you when they're off? That's what defines you. That's what sustains you when everything else falls away. The quiet work is not wasted. It is the root system of your life, unseen, but holding everything up. So if you ever find yourself discouraged because no one noticed your growth or your discipline or your courage, remember this, it is not their job to notice. It's yours. And it's not their approval that gives it worth. It's your integrity, your alignment, your truth. Keep going, not because they see you, but because you see the value in becoming. Some of the most important progress you'll ever make will go unnoticed by the world. Make it anyway. We live in a culture that glorifies speed. There's a constant pressure to move quickly, graduate on time, land the dream job early, achieve success before 30, build a life that looks impressive and efficient. And if you don't meet that timeline, the world has a way of making you feel like you're behind, like you've missed the window, like you're somehow failing. But let me say something that needs to be said more often and with more conviction, fast or slow. Forward is still forward. We all begin at different starting points, and we all carry different weights. Some people are running with a clear track ahead of them, while others are climbing uphill carrying emotional baggage, trauma, responsibilities, or simply the complexity of a different lived experience. So how can we expect everyone to move at the same pace? Psychologically, pace is deeply tied to personal readiness. You may intellectually want to move fast, achieve the goal, fix the problem, arrive at the destination. But your nervous system might not be ready. Your emotional readiness matters. Healing can't be rushed. Self-discovery isn't a checklist. Learning to love yourself, to trust yourself, to rebuild your sense of self-worth. These things take time, and the process will look different for each person. Some people learn quickly through experience, others through quiet reflection. Some bloom early, others later. But blooming late doesn't make the flower any less beautiful. The danger in rushing is that we often bypass the very steps that are meant to build us. We reach milestones without maturity. We enter relationships without healing. We chase goals without asking if they even belong to us. And then we wonder why the success feels empty, why the joy doesn't last, why we feel disconnected even when we're doing everything right. When you honor your own pace, you build something far more sustainable. You allow yourself to grow with depth, not just direction. You develop resilience, not the brittle kind that shatters under pressure, but the flexible kind that bends and adapts. You start to build a life that's rooted in awareness rather than image, and in truth rather than timeline. Philosophically, this speaks to the deeper nature of time and being. We're not machines. We're not products on an assembly line. We are human beings, living, unfolding, evolving. The Greek philosophers spoke of two types of time: chronos, which is linear measured external, and kairos, which is about the right moment. The sacred, unquantifiable timing of transformation. We spend so much of our lives chasing chronos, the deadlines, the expectations, the comparisons, when the most meaningful parts of our journey are happening in kairos. And here's what's truly liberating: you are allowed to move slowly. You are allowed to take your time, to pause when you're overwhelmed, to start over without shame. You are allowed to grieve your losses, to sit with your confusion, to gather yourself before taking the next step. And none of that makes you weak or broken. It makes you conscious. It makes you wise. I've spoken to people in their 40s and 50s who say they've just begun to truly know themselves. And they speak not with regret, but with awe, because they finally stopped running someone else's race. They stopped forcing themselves to keep up and they started listening to what their life was actually trying to teach them. That kind of arrival, late or not, is powerful, because it's real. So if you are someone who feels like you're moving slower than others, let me offer you this: you're not behind. You're in process of. And process is not failure, it's formation. The pace you're moving at might be the exact pace you need in order to carry the life you're meant to live. Don't let the noise of other people's timelines make you abandon your own rhythm. Progress is not a competition. There is no medal for finishing faster. And sometimes the slowest paths are the most profound ones, because they give you time to see clearly, to grow deeply, and to become someone not just successful in the world's eyes, but fulfilled in your own. What matters most is not how quickly you arrive, but how intentionally you walk. And the truth is, you can't rush becoming. Becoming takes time. Becoming requires presence. And becoming, more than anything, demands that you respect where you are, even if it's not where you expect it to be. So the next time you're tempted to panic because someone else seems ahead of you, pause. Ask yourself, am I growing? Am I learning? Am I still moving? If the answer is yes, then you're doing just fine. Progress without pressure, growth without comparison. That is the kind of journey worth trusting.